Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call Cinemusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action. It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week.
You know, there's no use kidding you, Rocky. I've been out to get you. I was kind of a chump to fool around with this at all. Like I told you before, I'm 60% legitimate now. You know, Cobb doesn't have anything on us yet. He's trying to get us to fight it out for it. What are you doing?
You ever hear of a game called Russian roulette? It's supposed to show how much nerve you have. 6 chambers, 1 bullet.
Oh, no, wait a minute, Rocky. Now, take it easy, Rocky.
Every time I spend this, you've got a 5 to 1 chance. That's better odds than you gave my friends last night.
Look, Rocky, the money's in the safe underneath this desk.
I'm not interested in the money now.
Look, Rocky, I'll tell you where the rest of it is. It'll be a cinch for you to pick it up.
That was a messy killing, Castro. A pretty little girl isn't so pretty anymore. A one-legged Marine is all shot up just because somebody thought he was me.
You'll have $100,000, Rocky. I'll help you get out of the country, huh?
You don't get the idea, do you?
Well, you cut that out of me.
All right, stupid. Pick up the phone and call Cop.
You're nuts, Rocky.
You want to play some more?
What am I supposed to tell him?
Tell him to get over here. You're going to make a confession.
In terms of sheer volume, no single home video outfit has released more previously impossible to find rare film classics as Olive Films has in the past 2 years. And now they've come up with yet another gem, a comparatively unknown film noir classic aptly entitled Cry Danger, in which Dick Powell is in top form as a tough guy hero fresh from prison and bent on finding out who framed he and his best friend for robbery and murder. The restoration of Cry Danger in the crystal clear clarity of Blu-ray is now available, courtesy of Olive Films, even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. Cry Danger has been rescued from oblivion and meticulously restored by my distinguished guest today, Eddie Muller, who via his sensational books and DVDs on film noir, restoration of various noir classics, through his acclaimed Film Noir Foundation, and personal appearances, has done more than anyone to shine the spotlight on this great, dark film genre. Eddie Muller, the Czar of Noir, welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time, and it's great to have you here.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun talking.
One of the reasons that I wanted you on the show was to talk about your incredible restoration of the wonderful film noir Cry Danger. But before we get to that, I want to discuss... Well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Now, Eddie, I'm a little disappointed. I expected you to wear a trench coat with your hat sort of slung over and a cigarette dangling out of your mouth. What you're wearing now does not look very noirish. So
you're revealing my secrets.
Oh, no. Some of them I can't reveal. This is a family show. Manson family. But anyway, when did your interest in film noir begin? And what films really triggered it
I started watching these films when I was maybe in the 7th or 8th grade in junior high school, and I was, pretty much a fully fledged cinephile, although I didn't know the word, by the time I was in high school. And then I was, combing the shelves at bookstores for books about cinema and stuff like that. And that's when I discovered, ooh, look, this is Thieves Highway is actually called the film noir. How interesting, and it was actually Thieves Highway that I now credit with being like the film that really hooked me. Obviously because it was set in San Francisco, which was my hometown, and the fascination of seeing a film shot on location in the town where I lived, but not recognizing any of that town because it had all been swept away. By the time I saw it, it was like, early 70s, and the whole produce market and everything where that film is shot was gone and replaced by the Golden Gateway Center and all that. And so I have to say, in all honesty, Dick, that experience of learning about the real world through the movies, through the filter of the movies, and then going back and exploring the reality of what the world was really like, that's kind of where it began for me, and that's something that I have been doing ever since.
Well, I'm a little bit, I have to admit this, just a touch disillusioned, because I was hoping you would come up with something like When You Were in Stir for Murdering a Duplicitous Dame's Husband, or maybe In Stir for a Failed Jewel Heist. You then became fascinated. What you've told me is comparatively mundane, but I guess that can.
Well, Dick, I'll tell you this. How do you know I haven't committed the perfect crime? Because I certainly wouldn't tell you if I had. So you can just go right on thinking that this guy is really dangerous, and he may not be trustworthy, because for all you know,
well,
there may be some bodies buried along the route.
Here's what I want to ask you, because you know what I found with fans of film noir. Occasionally, there are some who consider a specific film noir, and others who will look at the same film and say it's not. What I would like to hear is Eddie Muller's own definitive personal definition of what constitutes film noir.
Well, God, I hope I'm not going to disappoint you again now, Dick. I have two ways of looking at this, and I'm going to give you, in my role as the czar, I do have, definitive answers for these things, but I have several definitive answers. If you're looking at it from a content standpoint, which I tend to do because I'm a writer, before anything else, I self-identify as a writer. So I tend to look at these stories from that perspective. And in that case, I really tend to think of what I call hard noir as tales in which the protagonists are, for lack of a better word, the villains. That to me is how I personally define noir. So if it's the difference between saying that The Big Sleep and Postman Always Rings Twice or Double Indemnity. To me, The Big Sleep is a detective story. Double Indemnity is noir, because you're actually, the protagonist is the criminal, and the audience is made to empathize with someone who is doing the wrong thing. To me, that's kind of unique to noir. Now, on the other hand, there's also the whole stylistic consideration.
That's what I was going to ask you, because for me, just as an example, let's put two films with a similar plot together, Double Indemnity and The Postman Always Rings Twice. I consider Double Indemnity, because of its incredible directorial and photographic and musical style, to be a perfect noir. On the other hand, The Postman Always Rings Twice doesn't work for me as a noir, not because of the plot, but because for me it's too MGM. Tay Garnett is not the right director. The score is not right. The pacing, for me, the photography, for me, it's not a noir. And yet Double Indemnity is. What would you have to say to that kind of appraisal?
I agree with it.
Oh,
honestly.
You do?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, to me, as a writer, like I say, the story The Postman Always Rings Twice is, to me, a definite example of noir, whether you call it film noir or literary noir, whatever you want to call it. I completely agree with your assessment of the films, but yeah, you're absolutely right. When people say, well, if I don't understand film noir, what should I watch? I say, well, Double Indemnity. I mean, it's the definitive film noir. So I do tend to come at this from two angles, and I totally understand that to some people, and I've had this conversation with, Paul Schrader and Barry Gifford and all these guys, film noir is an artistic movement in Hollywood, specifically in Hollywood for them. It started at a certain time, it ended at a certain time, and it was a certain kind of story, but it's the way the story was told. There was no reason it had to be done that way. That's what made it an artistic movement. The filmmakers were just inspiring each other.
Isn't it
differently?
Isn't it also a studio thing? Frankly, I think you could have taken the script of The Postman Always Rings Twice in, what was it, 45 or 40, around 45, 1945?
It was released in 46, yeah.
46. And if you transferred it, let's say, to Warner Brothers or RKO, with the same cast, except dear old Cecil Kellaway, who I feel is totally miscast as the husband. He's much too cute and sympathetic. It's all wrong. But if you take that film and give it to Raoul Walsh, as an example, or at Warner Brothers, or Eddie Dmytryk at RKO, you would have, I think, another quintessential film noir. I had lunch with a gentleman who owned some kind of a movie magazine about 10 years ago, who dismissed MGM and said MGM never, ever did a noir film. And I said, really? What about... And I wonder whether you consider these noirs. As far as I'm concerned, the first MGM noir, and this is just for me, is a film called High Wall.
Oh, sure.
Which I consider to be a beautifully made noir with great performances.
In some ways, you could almost call it a definitive noir.
I would, and I think it's a great, great film. And I think about other MGM films, some of the Anthony Mann,
films. Sure. Side Street is a terrific film.
Side Street is a
Border Incident.
Border Incident, yeah.
And don't forget, looming over all of these at MGM is the Asphalt Jungle.
Exactly, which is at the very top of my list of all-time favorites. But at the time Postman was made, I don't think MGM was really ready or able.
Isn't it really a combination of factors, though? I mean, what you're saying, I totally agree with. I mean, I'm the first person to call RKO the House of Noir.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they made more great film noir movies there than any other studio.
I agree.
And of course, MGM being the Tiffany of studios, and Louis B. Mayer famously saying, I wouldn't cross the street to see garbage like that about the Asphalt Jungle.
Yeah.
That obviously plays a big role in it, but then you get somebody like a John Huston who has enough power in his own right to go into a studio and make the film he wants to make, regardless of what the studio is. Something can emerge from that. The High Wall is fascinating to me because, Curtis Bernhardt is not a director with a lot of juice. He's not John Huston, yet to me, that was released in 47, and to me, a film like that and its existence at a studio like MGM just proves the pervasiveness of that black tide in Hollywood at that time, that everybody was making these. For about 5 years, every studio was making them. And MGM can say, the bosses there can say all they want about we don't do that kind of stuff or whatever. But they obviously cleaned up The Postman because they chose to sell it as a woman's picture.
Mm.
And they took the grit out of it, that somebody like Raoul Walsh would have given it, and made it a romantic melodrama. I totally agree with your assessment of the film. Of all the versions of The Postman, it's my least favorite.
Mine too. Give me another example of a film that most people consider noir, but you don't think it is.
Well, the biggest one is The Big Sleep.
Uh-huh.
I actually consider The Big Sleep to be much closer to a screwball comedy than to a film noir.
Yeah. I absolutely...
It has all the window dressing, but the heart of that film is very, very light and optimistic, and it's playing with the conventions of the genre.
I don't care.
Feels no conviction towards it.
I don't care how horribly poor Elijah Cook dies, because he dies horribly in every film he's ever made. But to me, I agree with you. I think it's Howard Hawks at his funniest. It's, to me, almost as funny as His Girl Friday.
Well, what's kind of funny about that film is... so many people take it so seriously, and they take Chandler so seriously, that when something like The Big Lebowski came out, which clearly is the Coen brothers' riff on Raymond Chandler and detective movies and everything, and it's like, wow, somebody's finally doing a spot-on parody of that. I think, The Big Sleep sort of already was the spot-on parody of that.
Yes.
I mean, they did it the first time. They set the template, and they kind of made fun of the template simultaneously.
It's a delightful film, but it's not noir. And I have to tell you, Eddie, coming up now, and I'm so delighted that you can share this moment with me. It's the most popular segment of my show. It's called a station break. And it's coming up right now, and we'll be back with Eddie.
I'm excited.
Yes, you should be. It's in black and white. And we'll be back in just a few seconds with Eddie Muller.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is exclusively produced and released by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc. All rights reserved. Eddie, now I want to get specific here and discuss this wonderful Olive Films release of a fairly unknown noir called Cry Danger. And I love this film. I ran it for a few nights ago. I hadn't seen it in years. It was not that easy to find or to see.
This is the job that we do, Dick. We rescue these films from oblivion, to be quite honest with you, If you think your listeners are interested in this story, I can tell you the whole thing. It's quite an involved saga, but it does speak directly to the work that my Film Noir Foundation does, and not just me, but film preservationists and restorationists all over the world. What the challenge is in finding these orphaned films and getting them back in circulation. Dick Powell was a very, very interesting figure in Hollywood history. You know the story of his, transformation from a lightweight guy in the 1930s, a song and dance guy, to what I call, the noir Nighthawk with Murder My Sweet, and he definitely took charge of his own career to the degree that he was not just an actor, but a producer of his own films at a certain point.
As far as I'm concerned, it was the most spectacular transformation of an actor, I think, of the 40s. And from what I've heard, he desperately wanted to be cast in Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity, and Billy Wilder just laughed at him.
I have a great appreciation for Dick Powell. The problem he had as an actor for noir people is that he does not stand up well against Bogart and Mitchum and big tough guys like that, But in his own way, he was as good a wisecracker as there was in the movies, which I think Cry Danger shows brilliantly.
Yeah.
He had that if you think Philip Marlowe is laconic, then Dick Powell is your guy, because he had a laconic way with a wisecrack that was better than anybody else at that time. So,
I agree.
He's terrific. So he became an independent producer, and because he knew this very thing about himself, that he could portray this quality on screen, and it dovetailed so perfectly with what was popular at the time, especially in what we now call film noir. He said, well, if the studios don't see me this way, I'll take care of it myself. And he financed his own films, like Pitfall and like Cry Danger. But what happens is, these are the very films that are most at risk, because they are independently produced, and they do not have the protection of a big studio. And Powell was a very savvy businessman, and so when he signed a distribution deal with the studio, in this case RKO, it was for a specific period of time. It was first release of the film, after which the rights to the movie would revert back to him so that he could sell it again and get the money on a reissue of the picture. Well, that happened with Republic Pictures, who reissued Cry Danger. But after that, the paper trail gets a little sketchy, and that Republic film library went through decades of being sold and traded, and it became the NFT archive for television films, and the film was transferred to 16. And in all of this buying and selling of film libraries, and this applies to all films, not just Cry Danger, there's the big risk of, okay, we know you own it and you have the paper to prove it, but where's the film? And this is the big issue. So you see the situation that arises here is, A, you have to figure out who owns this film today, when so many, it's that merger mania that happened in all businesses, but it's particularly bad in the entertainment business, because the films can just slip through the cracks. It's actually finding the material that you can make a new print from. That's the challenge. So in a nutshell, the RKO film library ended up at Warner Brothers, but they didn't own the rights to Cry Danger, but they had the negative of Cry Danger, or they didn't even have a negative. They had like a fine-grained positive of Cry Danger. That was it. But they didn't own the film. So Paramount actually owned the Republic Library, but they had nothing on this title. So this is where the Film Noir Foundation sort of got in the middle and brokered a deal whereby we convinced Warner Brothers to deposit the film at the UCLA Film and Television Archive so we could restore it, although there was no financial incentive to them, nor was there anything that Paramount could really do with the film, because they didn't have the film. They owned it, but they didn't have it. So this is the big deal. And honest to goodness, Dick, the reason we did this restoration almost 4 years ago now, and restoring the film is one thing, clearing everything up to allow it to be released on DVD is something else entirely. And so it wasn't that huge a chore to actually get a 35mm film restoration made of Cry Danger. It was beautifully done, and we're extremely proud of it. But getting that restoration to be the source of Olive's DVD release was a challenge. So I'm very pleased, when it's all said and done, to say that people who do get that Blu-ray will be seeing our restoration of the film, which is not just a picture restoration, mind you, but a sound restoration as well, which is vitally important. I don't know that people understand that the sound quality is in many ways more important than the picture quality.
Well, there's no question about it, especially if you think about the great film composers that have been associated with noir, and I'm talking not only about Nicholas Rosa, but the very underrated Roy Webb,
yes,
whose RKO scores I absolutely adore and wish they were available somewhere. And obviously the sound is so important because sound was an integral, and the design of sound was an integral part of an effective film noir. And
absolutely, yeah.
I do want to congratulate you because I ran this beautiful, beautiful restoration of Cry Danger, which is available courtesy of Olive Films, and I think it's beautifully done. And I just hope that there are many, many more restorations coming up. But what I would like to ask you, Eddie, wait a minute, let me get out my... This is a 45 I'm holding here. And
let me back slowly towards the door.
Don't back, stay where you are, don't move, in my best Alan Ladd voice. And I wanted to ask you whether you'd be kind enough to grace us next week, because there's so much. We've barely skimmed the surface. There's so much more to talk about. I want to discuss next week my favorite film noir director, Robert Siodmak.
Yes, because he's mine too. I would be more than happy to return to discuss my favorite film noir director.
I'll look forward to it. And next week, Eddie Muller and yours truly, Dick Dinman, do a neat segue from Cry Danger to another film noir gem, Cry of the City, as we both salute our favorite noir director, Robert Siodmak. Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you'd like to hear some of my older vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.